If you picked up our program for today, you will notice inside we have a space for you to write your IDs for your plans. I've written my IDs. I will take pictures of my cars, exterior and interior, before a storm, because we lost 2 cars in the storm. I will clear my backyard of loose objects that can turn them into dangerous projectiles, because I just couldn't imagine that my lawnmower would have moved from under the deck to 10 feet away. I am getting prepared. The rest of my plan will be filled in as I listen to the presentations, and I hope you will fill yours as well. But before we listen to the important initiatives and programs and resources available for us to be ready, I want to ask you to put your hands together and welcome our host tonight, who is committed to advancing our emergency preparedness in every way. Borough President Eric Adams showed his commitment to the city on 9/11 13 years ago, and he continues to ensure that Brooklyn gets it right. Please welcome Borough President Eric L. Adams.
Thank you so much, Sandra. And I believe that under the previous administration of Borough President Marty Markowitz, Sandra really led the team here in Borough Hall around Superstorm Sam. I like to call him Sam because men are more destructive than women. I don't know why they call it Sandy. But, and I recall that night as well as I drove through Canarsie and Manhattan Beach and Coney Island and the level of devastation. But this issue is more than about man-made disasters, because the ultimate disaster about natural disasters is also about man-made disasters. As many of you know, one of the most horrific disasters here in the country was actually man-made. September 11th, the attack on our center of trade and how we responded to that and being prepared. And there's just really a wealth of information that could be utilized on how to be better prepared. And preparation really goes down to the everyday school teacher, as well as some of the CERT teams. I see some of our CERT members who are here, just in organized fashion of moving forward. As whenever there's a major disaster, it has an awesome strain on the city agencies. And that's why it's important as we as everyday citizens are prepared. And so we're happy to host this event in partnership with some of the great agencies and in partnership with my good friend, Councilman David Greenfield, who's here, and I would like for him to say a few words, if you could hobble over. But it is the combination of those of us in government understand that it is the combination and the coordination of government, nonprofits, private entities. It's a combination of all of those items together. So we have a lot of the men and women of the New York City Police Department who are here in the front row. We want to thank them. Oftentimes during these emergencies, they just have long tours. It's challenging to navigate and move people about, during an emergency of this magnitude. But they do it every day, and they do it so well. It doesn't matter who's the mayor, who's the governor, doesn't matter of local politics. They are extremely committed to being the ultimate professionals that allows us to move away from a disaster to a state of normality. And so we can't thank you, men and women of the NYPD, enough for what you do every day. I'm excited about having my good friend, Chief Esposito, who's now the head of OEM. We cannot have a more steady hand at the wheel during a turbulent storm. A well-tested leader, his ability to handle, disasters of any proportion, his level of commitment to our city and to our state is just unmatched. After so many years of being the chief of department and providing us from everything from September 11 to Superstorm Sandy to so many other incidents, to have him here today and at the helm of OEM, I'm sure OEM is going to go in a direction that brings the wealth of experience that he has. And so we thank you for your commitment to the city. So we're going to turn the program over to the head of OEM, Chief Esposito.
Thank you very much. And Eric, I like being called chief. I love it. It's a title I had for a long time, and it's kind of rough for me to get used to commissioner, so chief is fine with me, believe me. I want to thank everybody for coming out here tonight, elected officials, so many of our community leaders, FD, well represented. I appreciate you coming out here on a night to help us get ready. Again, I see so many neighborhoods here. I see Williamsburg, I see Borough Park, I see Coney Island, Bensonhurst, Crown Heights. Everybody's represented, and that's terrific because we have to be prepared. And we'll talk about that in a minute. One of my staff members is going to give a presentation, but I just want to tell you thank you. Thanks for coming out because the lessons we've learned in this city, I think, is that you have to be ready, and it's better to be ready ahead of time than in the middle of the storm. Our motto that we're trying to develop in emergency management here is it's better to be able to say, I know what to do, instead of what do I do? And that's what this is all about. And by the turnout, I can see that we want to learn more about this. We're going to get into it in a little while. But again, I'm very happy to be here. I'm only here about less than 90 days, so I'm still learning. So I'm going to have the experts from my office come up and give a little presentation. But just some of the notes that I made here. The mission of OEM is to make sure that we're ready. We look at all the plans. We look at everybody, all the other city plans. We look at the health department, police department, fire department, every single agency. We sit down and we look at their plans. And we make sure that they're coordinated, that one plan doesn't contradict another plan, that everybody can work together, collaboration, and that's what we do here. When I took over, the mayor called me right up and says, I want a tabletop exercise. And some of you are familiar with that in the FD and PD, some of the other city agencies, they do their tabletop exercises. And what we do is we sit in a room and they come up with a scenario. And the first one we did, the mayor said, I want a storm, a hurricane. So we sat down and every commissioner was there. Every commissioner when the mayor makes a phone call, everybody shows up. So we had over 100 people in my conference room, EOC, and we started talking about it. And you know what? A lot of people weren't happy to be there. You know, it takes a lot. 3 hours. It's almost like CompStat, fellas. It was like a CompStat session. 3 hours of running scenarios and trying to see if everybody was ready. And when it started, you can see they weren't too thrilled. But right after we got into it, people are leaning forward in their seats. And it was almost like they believed we were in the middle of a hurricane. And everybody got into it. And we discovered some things that we had to fix right at that meeting. And it was better to fix them there than in the middle of the storm. So that's what it's about. That's what we do here. That's one of the things we do here at OEM. We try and get the city better prepared, city agencies, for an emergency before it happens. The other part of it is get the public ready before it happens. If you look back at Sandy, we were ready. We had great plans, but I think the operational part maybe could have been a little better. And that's what we're trying to do. We have more FD folks coming on board now. We have more PD folks coming on board to help us. They'll be our people on the street. What my vision is, the city right now is appointing directors. They have people that work in City Hall, high-level people. They're going to adopt the borough. They're going to go out to the boroughs, and they will be the representative of the mayor's office for, let's say, Brooklyn. And they're going to be the go-to person. They'll go to the council people. They'll go to the community leaders, borough presidents, and the people that are sitting here. And they're going to establish relationships with those people. And through those relationships, you will hopefully be better prepared. You'll have a contact person when you have a question. We're going to share our plans with the people. We want to make sure that the people that are on the street know what the plan is. Because who's better to tell us what's wrong with the plan and what's right with the plan than the people who are living out here? So we're going to be doing that. Now, those borough directors are appointed by the mayor to go out and do this. What the plan at OEM is to get our people, and that's why we're trying to get more people who know how to do things on the street. The people that are sitting here, the police and the fire, that have experience on the street, that can hook up with these borough directors and work that relationship with the borough people, with the elected officials, the community leaders, and the people that live in Coney Island, live in housing in Coney Island that were affected so dramatically during Hurricane Sandy. So we're going to establish that relationship before the incident happens, share our plans with the folks before the incident happens so that we can be better prepared for when it happens. After Sandy, we come up with about 12 playbooks. We critiqued the whole city, whether it was water, getting rid of the water, whether it was lighting, whether it was feeding, whether it was sheltering. We made up 12 playbooks that critiqued every single thing that we did right and everything that we did wrong, so that hopefully we will be better prepared for the next disaster. And as the borough president said, this is not just about storms. This is about man-made disasters. You know, I think what comes to mind to everybody is always the hurricane. But if we're doing our job at OEM, then we're preparing you for every kind of disaster, whether it's man-made or natural disaster. And that's what it's about. So and I was very happy to see that the flyer that the borough president put out really resembles a lot of our paperwork. Rachel, this is almost a carbon copy of our paperwork. And that's great, because you're going to get some of our paperwork, and in that paperwork, it's going to tell you how to make a plan. You're going to hear that word plan over and over from me. I'm sorry. But that's what it's about. And what we hand out is a booklet, and it tells you what you should do to be ready. Where you're going to meet your loved ones, perhaps, if you get separated in a storm or in an earthquake. We've had earthquakes in the city. We've had tornadoes. Who to contact, where to go if you have to meet these people. And if you fill out that booklet, you'll be better prepared for any emergency. We have a new app that's going to come out for all you techies, that you can do this online on your phone, so that, and I don't think it's ready yet, about a week or two I think it'll be out, where you can put this information on your phone and send it to who you want to send it to. So now something happens, well, you don't have this in your pocket maybe, but you have everybody has their phone in their pocket, that's for sure. You go to your phone, you hit the app for it, and you can see where you're going to find your loved one, what to do. We have go bags that we give out sometimes. Everyone should have one. It's a bag that should be right by your door, that if you got to go, you take it and you go, and it'll have the essentials for you. One of the things that we did with Sandy, and it's not funny, but you know, we lost 40-some-odd people during Sandy. Most of those people would not have lost their lives if they would have listened to the evacuation order. I think it was probably maybe 3 or 4 people would have died instead of 40-something. We looked at that and we said, why didn't they leave? Well, some of it, I think, they didn't believe the storm was going to be bad as it was. We all hoped it wasn't going to be as bad. We went to Irene a couple of years before that. It wasn't that bad, and now they felt maybe we were crying wolf. Well, we weren't. But we also found out that some of these folks didn't leave their house because they didn't know where to go. They weren't sure how to get there. They didn't leave because they had pets. They didn't want to leave in their house alone. We have adopted our plan to address those issues. Even your pet. If you go to the shelters, if you would have to evacuate to a shelter, we have supplies for your pets there. So we've really done some self-examination, and we think we're much better prepared for the next storm. Again, the mission that we have is get the city agencies ready, and get the people ready. I think most of the people that don't know what we do are the people that need it the most. The people that live in housing in Coney Island, the people that live in the poorer areas in Red Hook that got flooded so bad, Garrison Beach, the local bodega on the corner. They don't know what to do in an emergency. And not just a storm. If that local store loses power and they lose all their groceries or all their meat in their freezer, they're out of business for a week or two. They can't afford that. You know, maybe the big C-town can afford that, but these small mom-and-pop shops can't afford that. So we want to get the message out to everybody about what OEM can do for the people on the lower rung of that totem pole. So I'm very encouraged by the turnout here. I'm going to turn it over to Raquel right now. She'll give you a little presentation. I urge you to listen. Write down what she does. Take our paperwork when you go. Make your plan. Take it serious. Take it serious, because what you do now before the incident will maybe save you a lot of headache after the incident. One thing I want to talk about is our search team. Anybody know what CERT is? C-E-R-T, CERT? Okay, that's great. A lot of these don't know, so that's good. We can show you what that is. I have some CERT members right here in the corner. Stand up there, ladies. These are our CERT members. We had them come in here. They were in our green CERT team members. These are our volunteers from OEM. Thank you, ladies. And thank you for your support and your hard work. Thank you so much. What they do is, OEM, we're starting a class, I think, in a week or two, where we will train people from the community. We tell them, come on in, we'll train you. FD, you guys do a great job training our CERT members. FD comes in, you're a big part of it. You come out to our facility under the Brooklyn Bridge. I walked out one night, the street was on fire. FD had set up fires on the street, controlled fires, to train the CERT members on how to deal with a fire. And they were out there putting the fire out, small fires, not gonna go into a burning building, but a small fire, they'll help them how to address that. PD comes out, does the training. We do some training. But these are volunteers from the neighborhood. And what's good about these folks is they live in the neighborhood, they know the neighborhood, they know who the kids are, they know who the stores are, they know who the people who live in the neighborhood. They learn how to handle situations, medical, emergencies, all kinds of emergencies. Then they go back to their community and we utilize them. You've seen them at some street fairs, you've seen them at all types of demonstrations of fire. They'll help us with crowd control, things of that nature. Then they go back to their neighborhoods and they put that training into effect. And we have success stories where they're giving CPR to people and saved their lives. They pull people off the train tracks. They've gone above and beyond what we've taught them to do. And I encourage us all, please, if you have someone who's interested in helping their community, look up our CERT program. It is a wonderful thing to get involved with for a couple of reasons. You learn some things that you can use every day in your household. And I'm telling you, one day you're going to help somebody, and what is better in our life than helping your friends and your neighbors, and maybe save a life. So I encourage you to do that. CERT members, again, thank you so much, and I'm looking forward to seeing you again. So I want to thank you again for coming out today. I think you're going to be very satisfied with what you learned here, and like I said, make a plan, be ready, and hopefully we never have to use it. Thank you so much.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you to the Brooklyn Borough President and his staff for putting this together. You've all taken the first step in preparedness by coming here. Hopefully it's not the first step, but nevertheless, this is going to give you some great background in what you need to know to prepare yourself. So we're going to kick this off by talking about personal preparedness tonight. What is OEM? OEM, Office of Emergency Management. Before we get into personal preparedness, we just want to quickly run through our mission and some of the things that we do. We plan and prepare for emergencies. We coordinate emergency response and recovery efforts. We educate the public about preparedness. We collect information. We provide it back to people, to different agencies, to City Hall. And we also assist in seeking funding to support preparedness efforts around the city. So today what we're going to be talking about is preparedness, personal preparedness, how you can make a plan to make sure that you are ready for the next event. And as has been mentioned several times already, the focus over the last 2 years has been very heavy on coastal storm preparedness just because we had Irene, followed by Sandy. But as several people have already said, you make a plan for whatever happens. You can't always plan. We don't always know what the next thing is going to be, but you start getting your family prepared, you get your friends prepared, you get your children, you know what your children's school's emergency plans are, and then hopefully whatever comes around next, you're going to be that much more ready for it. So first, be aware of your risk. About 3 or 4 months ago, we kicked off a Know Your Zone campaign. Hopefully you saw some of our rainbow Know Your Zones on MTA billboards around the city, on buses. The point of this campaign was, after Sandy, the zones were redrawn. So what during Sandy were zones 1, 2, and 3 for hurricane evacuation became zones 1 through 6. And we have spent a lot of time and effort trying to get people to be aware of the new zone that they're in, because this is what's going to be called out in another evacuation. Just show of hands, how many people know which evacuation zone they live in? Okay, so, no? Maybe a quarter raised your hands. So please, first thing you do tonight, go home, call 311 and ask them, look online and put your address in and find out. Pick up our hurricane brochure on the way out, look it up, know what zone you live in, know what zone you work in, know what zone your children's schools are in. Do you have elderly family members who don't live in the same borough as you are? Know which zone that they are living in as well. It's not just where you live, it's really your whole world is encompassed within these 5 boroughs. And so it's very important that you know which evacuation zone that you live in. So if I can urge you to get anything out of tonight, please do that, and I can help you do it. I can guide you in that direction, but 311 will also help you as well. Get informed. We have a few different methods for informing people about things that are going on around the city. I would also urge you to sign up for Notify New York City. It's an opt-in system. You sign up, you can give your email, your cell phone, your landline if you don't have a cell phone. And what will happen is if something is going on in your neighborhood, you will get an alert. You will get a message about what's going on. So it can be something as large as a hurricane evacuation. It could be that the CERT teams are lighting the street on fire that night, and it will let you know so that you don't come home from work and get nervous, there's a fire on my street, what's going on, and you call 911. So we really urge you to sign up for Notify New York City. There's a lot of information that we have at OEM that we can provide to you. So get informed, know your risks. Now we have 2 different plans that we urge people to do. Plan to evacuate and plan to stay. So plan to evacuate, have a plan. You could be evacuating for a coastal storm, you could be evacuating for a fire, infrastructure damage. Like we said before, we're talking all hazards here. For whatever reason it is, just be ready to evacuate your home. How do you do that? You have a go bag. And you've probably heard us say this before at other presentations, and you will hear it over and over again because this is very key to your personal preparedness. Have your bags, have information in there. Write down all the numbers that you need. Put your prescriptions in there, so if you have to leave, you know which prescriptions that you need that you can talk to a medical personnel about. Have comfort items for your children or for your family members, an extra set of car keys, house keys, whatever makes you comfortable to know you can walk out of your house and you have the materials that you need, that's what should go in your go bag. There's no one size fits all. We offer some suggestions, but it's very important. You should have one for each family member. For yourself, for everyone else in your family, your children should have their own go bag. Your pet should have their own go bag as well. They should be by your door, and you should check them occasionally because things do expire, batteries expire, food does expire. So this is something that you should do on an ongoing basis. The other plan is prepare to shelter in place. It could be winter weather, could be a power outage, but be prepared to stay in your house. And you have to have a lot of the same sorts of supplies. Have water, have food, have batteries, have flashlights. Don't wait till the power goes out to realize that you don't have any flashlights and you have to go stand in line at the local store along with everybody else hoping that you can get the flashlights and batteries. I mean, these are very basic, simple preparedness measures that you can do now to make sure that your family is prepared. And then get involved. We have the CERT teams. This is an excellent training. Get involved with your community. The training itself is fantastic. You'll learn a lot for yourself. You'll be able to give back to your community. We do these trainings in cycles, so we have one that's starting next week. The next one will be in January or February. It's about a 10-week cycle. We do one in each borough for each cycle, and it's a great way just to give back to your community. So we urge everybody to think about it, to get some more information. Everything I've talked about today, we have brochures and materials for on the table outside. So please take a look at it. You know, ask any questions to me afterwards. I'll be here. I think we're holding questions for the end. Okay, so I'll be here until the end to answer any questions. If you want to ask them in a forum, if you feel more comfortable talking one-on-one afterwards, I'm happy to do that as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. I just want to say a couple of thank yous to our staff. Without them, and I guess most of you know, without a dedicated staff, our office would not be able to do half of what we do and pull, for example, this great turnout. I want to thank Candace, Julian, Abe Friedman, who's coming up in a little bit. We have an awesome intern, Michael Muto, Joe Fazell on cameras, Robbie, who I think was around here somewhere helping out, always helps out, Catherine Kirk. Thank you guys, as always, for your help. Please remember to visit the tables. The organizations that are here providing resources that are helpful, I'm sure, to you. So please stop by each of the tables and pick up information. Just a side note, in collaboration with FEMA, there's a prepare-a-thon. OEM is sponsoring a supply drive, and our office has decided that we will partner with them. So we've placed a drop-off box in the lobby on the ground floor, and we're asking that you just stop by. The box will be here until the end of September, and you're asking that you and your friends just drop off some small items like LED flashlights, first aid kits, plastic rain ponchos, hand sanitizers, whistles, radios, things like that that could last, that people will need. OEM will pick up the box at the end of September, and these items will be placed in a go bag and given to families in the New York City Department of Homeless Services shelters. So I want to thank you in advance for you helping us out in that regard. I want to ask Abe Friedman to come up and introduce the next presenters. Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you, Sandra. And we're going to move on with the program. And I know everybody wants to hear more about the presentation, especially FEMA. But I want to introduce a couple of people. First, we have, of course, our chief from Fire Department, James Leonard, who is greatly familiar and recognized for his wonderful work. We also have here recently promoted to 3-star our great chief, Brooklyn North, Jerry Nelson. The chief from Brooklyn South, represented by his XO. Thank you so much for coming here tonight. We also have here all these COs, and I would like you to please stand up. I want to give you a round of applause for your wonderful work. All the COs from Brooklyn, Brooklyn North, Brooklyn South, SC94. You guys really are always there for the community. So I'll move the program right along. I want to just recognize one more partner to the community, although it's a different state, but we know the two governors hosted a conference yesterday on preparedness, and someone who made the trip all the way from Trenton, New Jersey, from the state police, Brian Polite. Thank you so much. Okay, I would like to call up Chief Nelson to talk about the NYPD preparedness. Thank you.
Thank you, Abe. First, I would like to thank the Borough President for putting something like this together. It's very important that we keep a well-informed community on what's going on and to be in a state of preparedness at all times. As the commissioner, my former chief and my current chief, stated that we are constantly in a state of preparedness where we're doing drills. We have people that are assigned to the NYPD, assigned from the NYPD, assigned directly to Joe Esposito. So we're all on the same page. What's key within the NYPD is we have a robust notification protocol where we can notify and mobilize officers, be it for a small issue or a large issue. We also like to keep the community, which is our partners, real informed on what's going on. We have sensitive locations that we have to deal with. You'll have hospitals that need to maintain their electricity or whatever's going on there for people that are sick. We have people within the community, which we have lists on, that are on life support. These are different things that people take for granted, where the police department and the fire department has to respond and make sure that those people that are ailing and those who need the most help are taken care of. A major event like Sandy that struck us all, and like someone said, we were warned in advance, and a lot of people took it for granted and did not prepare the way they're supposed to. That's why kudos once again to Borough President Adams. Well, the NYPD, knowing what was going to happen, put in a robust plan where we changed our days off. We threw out our duty chart, which that's how officers are scheduled. We worked 12-hour tours, 12 on, 12 off. We also made sure that all our emergency vehicles, all of our regular vehicles were placed in the high ground. That's all a part of being prepared. We had to provide security and coverage for the countless high schools that were being utilized for people within the community who lost their homes. That was a job in itself. And NYPD members of the service, like myself, who live in Rosedale, Queens, I didn't get a chance to go home for like 3 days, even though knowing that in my own community that there were houses that were lost. But that's the type of job that we have to do. We had, I don't know how many conferences over the phone with the police commissioner and Chief Esposito. You get out of your cart and you would make that call, and we would speak for a half hour, a report from every borough commander on what was going on within their commands. When we talk about preparedness, once again, simple things that we take for granted, we lost. Driving cars was a major thing. We could not get gas. And we had to provide security and coverage at all gas stations to make sure that some people did not quite get out of hand on that. There are simple things that we take for granted that when we have an emergency, it's where the government comes into play. And I love what the city council member says, that, well, like we're broken. But having forums like this and having constant drills and tabletop is how we prepare for incidents like that. Communications is key. We have what we call Emergency Operations Center, and that's right within headquarters, where every city agency that has something to do with preparedness or providing a service, they have a representative there. We also have people at his Emergency Operations Center. So there's constant communique. We have we have trees that are down and emergency vehicles cannot get by. Well, someone, a representative, is going to call that emergency center so that we can correlate together and whoever's responsible for get the work done. The things that we often take for granted, I'm here to tell you, there are tons and tons of drills and preparedness that we do to try and make your city as safe as possible. And all those little booklets that they're giving you out and all the tips that they're giving to you is something that you really have to pay attention to, because we take a lot of things for granted. I can go on and on with the different things that we do within the NYPD, but I'm quite sure you have, there's going to be a Q&A, so you have questions that you want to ask. I'm going to be here, my commanders are going to be here, and we're going to be here to answer your questions and work with you to get you prepared, God forbid, but it's going to happen. The next problem. And hopefully it's a small problem that we all can deal with, because we were prepared for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Nelson. I'm going to bring up Fire Chief James Leonard, please.
Good evening. I'll say my thanks to the Borough President for bringing this along. With these storms, basically, we go into three stages in the fire department. First is the planning stage, then the operational stage, and the post-operational stages. Just to know, we have extensive after-action reviews of all major operations. So fortunately for our paperwork on our plans for storms, hurricanes, winter storms have been around for many, many years, but we constantly update it and we constantly improve on them. We learned a lot from the 2000 winter snowstorm. then the run-up to Hurricane Irene really helped us in our preparedness for Hurricane Sandy. Hurricane Sandy hit us with things that we just didn't expect, and that's not a function of not knowing about it. We learn from every operation is separate and distinct, and we need to learn from what went on with that. One of the biggest things that we need to do, though, and this is where OEM is so crucial, is partnering. OEM's job is to coordinate all the city agencies, but we partner, a huge part, not only with OEM is the coordinating agency, but NYPD, Department of Buildings, Parks, Transportation, Department of Health, all those different things so we can perform our core competencies. We learned so much from Sandy in the core competency of fires. We had, in Brooklyn that night, we had roughly 10 major fires, but we didn't face the problems that they had in Rockaway. So after what happened with Rockaway, with the flood, and we couldn't get in there with our vehicles, now we have the ability to purchase equipment we have floating pumps that we can get firefighters in there to fight fires in flooded areas. We have high water vehicles now that can operate in up to 5 feet of water, and that they can also be used by snowstorm. We have large caches of equipment to use where our people, whether it be from boats, whether it be waders, whether it be flotation devices, exposure suits. But on top of that plan, we also developed a plan, how do we put those forces together between our firefighters and our EMS personnel, because our job is to protect the people of this city, and we will. We also partner very greatly. I know, you like chief or you like commissioner? The chief is there. I know he just met the other day with the National Guard. How do we tailor our needs so police, fire, National Guard in that operational period can use all their resources for that search and recovery? So we have our planning, which brings us up. We have our operational period, which we use our incident management teams, usually for 24-hour periods. Then once the major emergency has passed, we look for post-storm recovery, whatever that might be. Chief Nelson referred to, we have trees down. One of the responsibilities of the fire department, along with the parks, is street clearance. So we put together task forces for opening up streets. Chief Nelson went and said about the fueling. The police department's function was security, and our function is to make sure people are safe with the use of the flammable liquids and everything going on. That's why so many times with the police and the fire department, we're dealing with the same exact issue, but we're hitting it from a different angle. And it's OEM's job is to make sure that all our bases are covered so the citizens of this city are protected in the way they can be. One of the things I just want to bring up Chief Villani, who's our Chief of Planning, to talk about 2 programs that the fire department did beforehand, which also leads into what Chief Nelson was talking about, and those are the homebound evacuation plan and the medical facility evacuation plan. And you can really see how each one of these things, even though we both have our core competencies, one can't do it without the other. It takes a whole host of city agencies. Like I said, we're going right down the alphabet list, whether it be police, fire, DEP, sanitation, buildings, Department of Health, Parks. I'm sure I left something out, but it must be a coordinated effort. The lead up to that, which OEM does a tremendous job, is requiring the drills. So not only do we look at ourselves internally, we must look at ourselves externally. And we do it so the citizens of this city are protected no matter what the emergency. We've morphed into not only storms, but all hazards, as was noted before. These plans constantly in being changed, constantly in motion, with the number one goal is to protect the life and property of the citizens of this city. Let me just bring up Chief Villani. I'll just give you a quick overview of those 2 programs, the Home and Evacuation Plan and the Medical Facility Evacuation Plan.
Good evening.
Good
A lot of what OEM does is try to teach people to be prepared to be able to take care of themselves in the face of an emergency. Unfortunately, there are people within the city that do not have the ability to take care of themselves. We can issue an evacuation order. There are some people who unfortunately do not have the ability. They may have a mobility issue, they may have a transportation issue where they cannot evacuate even though they would want to do so. Those people we take care of with our homebound evacuation program. We started looking at both homebound evacuations and medical facility evacuations shortly after Katrina. And we saw the devastation in New Orleans and said, well, this is New York. I mean, that's not going to happen here. But we need to be ready for it in any case. And thankfully, we worked for years on it. And then when Sandy came along, we were well prepared to handle the emergency. Not that we can't get better. We continue to improve. We continue to learn. Every incident, at every exercise, we get better and better. For those people that aren't familiar with the homebound evacuation program, what happens after the mayor has issued an evacuation order for a particular zone or zones, people are expected to evacuate on their own. If you have, or somebody you know has a mobility issue where they absolutely can't get out on their own, no friends, no family, no neighbors, no accessoride, there's no way for them to leave, to evacuate, we ask that they call 311. 311 has a script where they'll ask them some certain information. That information is shared with the fire department. Depending on the size of the storm and how much time we have before the storm is scheduled to arrive, we put together teams of firefighters in different types of transportation. People are set up into 3 different categories. Those people that can walk with some assistance, those people who cannot walk but can sit unassisted, and then there are those people who are bedridden. People who can either walk with assistance or are wheelchair bound but can sit unassisted are taken by our firefighters to a shelter that they would normally be evacuated to. Those people who are bedridden, meaning that they cannot sit unassisted, the shelters are not set up to take care of them, so those people are actually transported to a hospital where, outside of the zone where they're safe. The other program we look at a lot is the medical facility evacuations. Again, if you remember some of the things that happened in Katrina, some hospitals chose to shelter in place. They were cut off from the world. No water, no food, no air conditioning. Patients were dying from the heat. There were reports of patients being euthanized by medical professionals so that they wouldn't suffer. Those are things that we can't have happen here in New York City. So what we started to do is working with both the City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, the State Department of Health, the Department of Transportation, Office of Emergency Management, we can go on and on with everybody that works into this. But the medical facilities are first warned that there could be something coming on where they may be forced to evacuate. And they're visited by a fire company. A small survey is filled out, and they're reminded to dust off their evacuation plans. At some point, if an evacuation order is issued, the hospitals and the nursing homes, the adult homes, they all have an opportunity to move their patients on their own. And hospitals have a number of ways where they reduce their census and move people out. At some point, a decision is made by the Department of Health, both city and state, that all the transport assets will come under the direction of the fire department, and we will manage the evacuation of those patients to other medical facilities that are identified by clinicians. During Sandy, we moved over 4,000 patients out of evacuation zones safely, securely, and we learned a tremendous amount from that. So those are the 2 programs that we work on a lot. We continue to tweak them. We're about to go into another planning cycle where we hope to make both of those plans even better, with easier access to the people that are involved with them, as well as hopefully make it a little bit friendlier for particularly the people in the homebound evacuation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief. Before we open up for questions, I would like to ask the FEMA rep to please come up and present their representative. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. So my name's Iris Epson-Hart. I'm with FEMA, Region 2. And actually, I'm coming up on my anniversary with FEMA. I started It's going to be 13 years. I started right after 9/11. And I've been around the country. I've worked about 30 disasters. I now work full-time here, and I was working Sandy. I was actually at New York City OEM, pre-landfall. So what I was asked to come and talk about today is what resources we have and what to expect from FEMA after the disaster. And I want to say thank you for inviting me here today. So again, we've talked about partnerships, and we can't do it alone. Nobody can do it alone, and our partners are local government, the voluntary organizations, the state, and federal. And we have what's called voluntary agency liaisons, and they're working all year round just as we are with planning, but our VALs, even if there's not a declared event, not everything that happens gets a presidentially declared disaster. And so they will work anyway with our local faith-based organizations, VOADs. The VOADs are voluntary organizations active in disaster. There is a New York City VOAD, a New York State VOAD, and every state, most states have them, and there's a national VOAD. And they consist of all of our non-governmental organizations that come together to help the community recover from whatever that disaster is. So they're available, like I said, whether we're coming to a disaster or not. So one of the things that everybody should really do is insurance. Insurance, insurance, insurance. You have to go to your insurance first. We cannot duplicate benefits, so if you can go to insurance, and regardless of the type of insurance, you should always clean up first. Don't wait for your insurance company. Don't wait for FEMA. Don't wait for anybody. You must clean up, especially if it's flood, water's wet. It's very dangerous to keep. And you take pictures. But you don't have to wait for FEMA to come or your insurance company, and we can't stress that enough. So if there's a disaster and FEMA, the president declares, you can register. Disasterassistance.gov is, there's a monumental amount of information on there, but there's a way to register that way, or you can call our 1-800 number, and that's 1-800-621-FEMA, and that's FEMA is 3362. Once you call and register, an inspector's going to come to your home. You have many inspectors during a disaster. You can have local, you're sometimes asked to call your local emergency management. You might have your insurance brokers come. FEMA will always have badges. They will always, we send our badges to local, the local government, police, so that they know who is going to be there. And we, try to avoid fraud or scams that are going on, so there will always be a badge. And like I said, local law enforcement will have that picture of those badges. So who's eligible? If you're a citizen, if you have any disaster-related damages to your home, you have to live in a declared area. So of course for Sandy, New York City, that was kind of interesting, people from around the country not understanding boroughs and counties. But of course New York City was declared immediately along with Nassau and Suffolk. We didn't do, I think it was the same day, the president declared it. They flew over, saw the damage, and we had what's called an expedited declaration. That doesn't always happen, and I want to stress that. Should we have another flood, we get nor'easters all the time. Sometimes they are declared. You won't get them declared the next day. We come out and we do damage assessments. So what else we can offer is rental assistance. Most people, if they can't stay in their home, which happened with Sandy, how many homeowners can afford to pay rent somewhere while they're paying their mortgage? That's something that FEMA can assist with. Lodging expenses. You might stay in a hotel when you evacuate. Some people go to a hotel. You may be eligible for reimbursement from FEMA. We had a program called the Transitional Sheltering Assistance for Sandy, and that's where people stayed in hotels. We didn't actually give the money to the people who stayed in hotels. That was given to the hotels. So it's called direct assistance. It doesn't go to you, it goes to the hotel, and you would get determined eligible after you registered. Direct housing. You've heard of the FEMA mobile homes. Well, there's really no place to bring in a mobile home into New York City or into urban areas. And that's one of the difficulties for housing. But there's also housing stock and rentals available. It's very difficult, as we know where we live. You go and look at a rental, if you don't commit to it that day, it's gone. So we do something called direct housing, where we could house people and pay for it directly. And we did have a small program here. It was in New York City, Nassau, and Suffolk. And fortunately, not that many people needed it. Home repair. We can pay homeowners who don't have insurance or who are underinsured. A lot of people didn't have flood insurance if they weren't required to. And we can give homeowners repairs to their primary residence if they were living there. It's not for renters. The landlords are required to fix a rental property. Replacement just means if our inspector went out and found an X amount of damage in the home, and then later the county says this can't be repaired, or your insurance company says it can't be repaired, you could be eligible for some more assistance from FEMA. There's another program called Other Needs Assistance. This is funded by the state and FEMA, and it's for your essential needs. Content insurance. A lot of people had flood insurance, and their structure was covered, but they didn't have personal property insurance. Renters, if they didn't have rental insurance, content. All renters, that should be in public service announcement, that if you can afford it, renters should really try to get whatever insurance they can on their personal property. And SBA, Small Business Administration, something that most people don't know, they have a disaster loan program. And it's for renters and owners, homeowners. And I'm talking about SBA even though it's another agency, because they're our partner. If there is a FEMA, a presidentially declared disaster, SBA is automatically there and able to give assistance with this disaster loan program. And someone mentioned earlier about small businesses, and they might not have had damage, but nobody can come to their store, or it's not accessible, and they lose income. SBA has what's called an EIDL loan, an economic injury loan, and that's exactly what it's for, a loss of income to a small business. So that's important to know. So again, the Small Business Administration, homeowners and renters, they can give a loan. It's low interest, and it varies, up to $200,000 to a homeowner and $40,000 to personal property, and businesses up to $2 million. The loan has to be paid back. The FEMA assistance doesn't. All FEMA assistance is a grant, and it's not taxable either. It's not income. But the SBA loan has to be paid back, and it could be over 30 years. So we always urge people to go to SBA. We have other programs. We can't do it ourselves. The local community, local government, state agencies can't do it on their own. Crisis counseling. There was a lot of mental health issues. There was a lot of loss, a lot of devastation. FEMA funds a program for mental health that goes, the money goes to the state and it comes down to the locals, in this case, New York City, and they were able to hire people for mental health, for crisis counseling. Disaster unemployment assistance. A lot of times, not everybody is eligible. You might lose your job because of the disaster. Not everybody's eligible for regular unemployment. Who's not eligible? Self-employed people. You're self-employed and you're not eligible for unemployment. You could be eligible for the disaster unemployment assistance. You might not have enough time in if you've lost your job. And so what you do is register for regular unemployment. If they deny you, you're automatically referred to this program. Again, it's funded by FEMA, and the money goes to the state. Disaster case management. Again, people are overwhelmed. The locals are overwhelmed, the voluntary organizations, and people need help with their recovery. It's a lot to put together a recovery plan, and we funded this program through the state for disaster case management. Disaster legal services, landlord-tenant disputes. They don't do litigation, but again, we fund the American Bar Association and the young lawyers. It's pro bono. They actually just give out information, give out advice. They might, for litigation, do some pro bono or refer you, but it's a really good resource when you're having some landlord-tenant disputes, and that happens quite often during a disaster. Some of the other federal assistance, the IRS. Believe it or not, there's a lot of write-offs. If you have losses that you didn't get reimbursed for, that you didn't have coverage for, IRS, there's publications for that. Department of Agriculture, there's the SNAP program, the nutritional program. Well, during a disaster, they can activate a disaster SNAP program. It's not like the old food stamps. It's if you've lost food, they might, the state could ask for this, the locals could ask for it, and they might activate it. And it's usually a one-time payment for people who've either lost their benefits for the month, they lost their food after they've purchased it, or just anybody who's lost their food and might not be able to afford to replace it all. HUD, Department of Housing, they're a huge partner in finding resources, voucher programs. They are a huge resources in helping during a disaster, and they were a great partner with FEMA and the state. Department of Health and Human Services, Social Security. People didn't get their checks, lost their checks, just need proof. And Social Security Administration, again, a huge partner. Departments of Veteran Affairs, the Postal Service. During Katrina, people were out of state. We actually, in one of our centers, had the U.S. Postal Service set up lock boxes for people to get mail delivered. And the Corporation for National and Community Service. One thing I wanted to talk about is people go and stay in a shelter, and they might have had help at home, personal assistance services. That's a contract that if it's beyond the state and the locals' means, and people are in a shelter and they just need a little help getting up, getting dressed. They've had help at home every day, but they can function on their own. Well, now they're in a shelter. This is a contract that we can activate so that people can have assistance at a shelter. We have our disaster recovery centers. You might have seen these all over New York. The first are our mobile buses. We use them either for connectivity, or there was a lot of places out in the Rockaways, Coney Island. Actually, Coney Island had the first one. We sent them out, and it was a place for people to come to get information. It was a way for connectivity. There were no cell services, cell phones, computers. We can register people at these places. We sent a lot of our FEMA staff out with cell phones, and just to get people registered with FEMA. It's a one-stop shop. It's not just SBA and FEMA. It's the state. It's sometimes 50 to 100 agencies can be in there at a super center. And when you register, there's a publication that will get mailed to you. It's called Help After a Disaster. This is the website. It's in over 20 languages. I believe it's in 22 languages. For New York City, for the New York Sandy, we have a language line that we can activate. So when people call up FEMA for assistance, it was over 70 languages that were there. And I believe for New York, over 65 were used. But this publication is in 22 languages. And it's available on the FEMA.gov website or disasterassistance.gov. And that's it. And I'll be around for any questions later. I had some before. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we have a rep from Red Cross please come up with a brief comments? Thank you.
Yes, good evening. I am not Kan Hong Lin, as your program indicates. He is our Chief Preparedness Officer and was detained and not available to be here this evening. And I have a few notes that he had sent me that I'm going to share with you a little later on. But since I had the mic for a few minutes, I did just want to talk for a few seconds about who I am and what I do and the program that the Red Cross is starting to develop here in the borough of Brooklyn. My name is Ed Taraka. I'm the relatively newly appointed disaster program manager for the borough of Brooklyn. I first want to thank the Borough President's Office for the invitation to attend. I had met President Adams for the first time at the 4-alarm fire in Brownsville on the 4th of July. I'd been on the job a couple of weeks, and there I was, the job director at the shelter that we had started. I shook his hand and asked if I could come for a meeting with him or another administrator in the office. And just last week, I had the distinct privilege of meeting with Deputy Borough President Rena, and we had a wonderful meeting, and we hope to be back again very soon to continue our discussions. Regards, Mr. Commissioner, from my boss, Kelly McKinney at the Red Cross, wants to say hello. So, next slide, please. I'm sorry. Oh, I have the clicker. Look at that, my gosh. Okay, so again, real quick. This is who I am. The Red Cross has developed these new positions in New York City, these borough-specific disaster program managers. They were kind of, the requirement was kind of appreciated after Sandy, and individuals at the Red Cross, disaster response, specific individuals were not identified to be on the ground to help coordinate the relief efforts. So about 6 to 8 months ago, disaster program managers were brought on in an attempt to bridge those gaps between some of the community-based organizations, faith-based organizations in the borough, attempt to coordinate and collaborate the efforts of all the stakeholders and prepare a more relevant response the next time another situation hits us here in the borough. We're a little bit better prepared to meet the relief needs in the community. Next slide, please. I'm riding the slow bus this evening, excuse me. So this is the community benefit of establishing disaster program managers in the borough. Since I've been on the job, I've had the great privilege to go out into the community and meet with many of the individuals that are involved with the long-term recovery group here in Brooklyn. And that's everybody from the Shorefront Y, Kings Bay Y, Coney Recovers, went down to Seagate. I had a great meeting with Noel Kepler, who I think was here earlier from the Red Hook Coalition, and they put on, if you don't know, a Ready Red Hook Day just last Saturday that the Red Cross participated in with a tabling event. And that emergency response plan that she has helped develop for the Red Hook Coalition is awesome. And it's a real fine example, I think, of what some of the other communities in the borough can start to build on. And certainly in conjunction with OEM and Salvation Army, American Red Cross has started some of those discussions about how we can attempt to build more of those community-specific response plans and how we can tie them all together here in the borough. This is a point of contact for myself. I'm the Brooklyn guy at the Red Cross, so any and all questions about all the different elements of the disaster cycle, please feel free to contact myself. Just 30 seconds. This is from Mr. Lynn, our preparedness officer. He wanted me to read the company line here. The Red Cross is initiating a disaster preparedness campaign to reach out to the community. One example is that we're partnering with New York State for the next 6 months to deliver the message of disaster preparedness to the region. It's a 1-hour presentation, so if you're interested in hosting an event, please contact myself or anybody at the Red Cross, and we can come on down to your location and communicate that very important message from the governor's office. Thanks so much.
Do we have a rep from National Grid?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for inviting National Grid to participate in this emergency preparedness event. My name is Kathleen Murray, and I'm with the Emergency Planning Department. My focus is on natural gas. My region, I cover New York State, downstate, upstate. Massachusetts, and Rhode Island. I know I have the remote, I just don't know how to operate it. Okay, I've been with National Grid for 21 years. I've been in emergency planning since 2009. I became interested in emergency management right after September 11th. My family is in law enforcement and in the fire department, and just became something that I wanted to focus my career on. So I'm fortunate that I was able to pursue my education in emergency management and just starting my master's degree as well. I'm a little nervous. Just give me a moment. So, for downstate New York, on Long Island and in New York City, we do have drills and training where we go over tabletop exercises. We have a couple, I think, with FDNY. We've been to various meetings with Con Edison and FDNY regarding our protocols and procedures. That's all part of our readiness, and that's how we do business. We are ready. And with gas emergencies, we don't always have the opportunity to plan ahead. We don't get the warnings that you would get with a hurricane. So sometimes the situation is a third-party damage or a water main break where there would be flooding. We do also have flooding from coastal storms, of course. And listening to all the speakers ahead of me, you know, I was affected by Superstorm Sandy. I lost my home. And listening to the FEMA representative and all the flashbacks of all the agencies I had to deal with and, you know, everything that you go through. And it is important to take all the suggestions from all the agencies that are here today, and it will save your family, you know, not so much your belongings. I mean, they are just belongings. I had to learn that. And it's an important thing that the Borough of Brooklyn is doing tonight. I just wanted to say that. So when there is an emergency, what to do when something happens, and all of a sudden we would have to evacuate if necessary. The fire department and the New York City Police Department would help us with that. We send out notifications to our gas organization, and with that, our customer and community management team would be notified. They would then activate as needed to whatever the situation may be, whether it's a small local outage in a specific neighborhood, or if it is a large outage such as Sandy, where it would cover large neighborhoods. We have trailers that we bring out to the neighborhoods. We can go door to door and let people know what the process is, and that's just what I wanted to talk about quickly, is to let you know what to do when the gas goes out. So once the gas is out, what happens? We have to fix the problem, of course, but we also have to go door to door to each and every customer, and we have to lock off the meter. We have to turn off the gas at the meter. We have to lock it off. It's a Public Service Commission requirement now, and it is very important. We need to gain access inside each and every building. So sometimes we need the fire department to help us. We need the police department to help us. We need locksmiths. We have to get in. So one thing I do want to send out the message to communities, it's important to have access information. It's important for us to have your contact information. It's important to update with email addresses, cell phone numbers. You know, if you do evacuate because of a storm, let your neighbors know where you're going, or let your neighbors have a contact information for you, because that will help the process along. If we do have to cut the gas off at the curb, it's a timely process to get the gas back on. And it's something that if we just knew you were, you know, staying out up in Westchester or somewhere, you know, north that was dry, it would be a lot easier to get in touch with people. So while we're going door to door and trying to get access and turning off all the gas meters, our field operations department and our instrumentation and regulation, they're getting the water out of the main or fixing the main, whether it's a damage or undermining. So repairs are going on, and we're going door to door, and there's a lot at once. Once the repairs are made, we gas back in the mains. Now we have to go back to each and every home. So again, the access information is crucial. We will go in your home. We will inspect our equipment, which is the regulator and the meter, but we'll also inspect your water heater and your boiler to see if it's safe to turn back on. If it's not safe to turn back on, we're going to refer you to a contractor. We're going to give you a tag with our phone number on it, and you'll have to call us after you have it checked, and then we'll come back. Of course, you do need to have safe electric power for your water heater or your boiler to work, so we will not turn on your gas if your electric is not on. That is something very important to know, because we had a lot of issues. I You have to have safe electric to the home, and then we will turn your gas back on. So, that's pretty much the process, like I said. The relighting of the appliances we will do. If there's a problem with your equipment after the flooding, you know, I know your boiler worked for 20 years, and now the flood, and now we can't get it relit. You know, sometimes you do have to get a plumber involved, but it's on a case-by-case basis, and we have people to help you through the whole process. So just some gas safety tips, and these are very important tips on an everyday basis. This is just everyday preparedness, you know. If someone claims to be a National Grid employee and coming to your door, ensure they have company identification on them. Do not let anyone in your house with that identification. If you smell natural gas, it's colorless, it's odorless, so we have to add a smell to it, and it smells like rotten eggs. That's plain and simple. I know outside there are go bags and there's some cards that have a scratch and sniff to let you know what it smells like if you're not familiar. Also, you'll see if there's flooding in your street, you'll see water bubbling up. That would be part of a gas leak sometimes, and we would respond to that as well. If your gas heating unit, for instance, won't shut off, you know, if you turn off the emergency switch and it's still running, that's an emergency. You should call us for that. All of our information is out on the table, and everything that I went over on the presentation is in brochures that we've created, you know, specifically after Sandy, but it's for any type of emergency, appliance safety after a flood, general gas safety tips, and the entire process for restoring your service to your home, including our phone numbers. So if I can just encourage everyone to make sure that we have updated contact information, and this way you will be restored as safely and as quickly as possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll now open up for a few minutes to questions to any of the agencies, OEM, NYPD, FDNY. Anybody who has a question, please just walk up to the microphone, and if you can please state your name or agency you represent.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Reverend Terry Lee. I'm the pastor of the Byways and Edges Youth for Christ Ministry and the president of Community Concern Network and Immigrants Responding to Crisis. Just want to find out, on August the 5th, my church was set on fire. And we have been serving the community for over 25 years, doing community service, 9/11 responder, work at Ground Zero. During the Hurricane Sandy, I was one of the first church that was out there in the Rockaway with some hot meal, and, you know, Red Cross had worked with us, and we have helped, you know, thousands of families, and that's what we do every day in the community. Now, since my church and community center has burned down August 5th, it's like we are like a fish out of the water. We have been dumped to the curb. So we want to know, in any way, you know, FEMA or, you know, Homeland Security, Red Cross, is there any type of assistance for organizations like ours that are certainly are in a crisis for such a time? We have our Borough President. He just put up a $5,000 reward for information. We have a visit, Dr. Jonna Scott, the Deputy Director for the White House Center for Faith-Based. She stopped by last week and take a look at the site. And now our landlord tell us we have to evict the place for within 30 days after the fire. So we want to know, you know, what can we do if there's anyone can assist us.
Well, if you give us your name, and Pastor, I know you very well. We know we go way back. But I think we can meet afterwards, and we can steer you in the right direction to the city agency. And I don't know if FEMA comes in with that, but if not, you see us afterwards. Raquel afterwards. We'll get your name. I have your name and number already, but just to make sure it hasn't changed, and we'll get in touch with you tomorrow and steer you in the right direction.
Thank you, Chief.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
One more question.
Good evening. Thank you very much. My name is Dr. John Barral. I'm particularly concerned about the emergency medical system in Brooklyn. Long Island College Hospital, as you all know, has been closed, which means that Brooklyn Hospital is receiving double the number of life-threatening illnesses that they have been receiving for the last 10 years. This is an impossible situation. Brooklyn doesn't have that kind of reserve ability, and so people are going to die. Children first, elderly first, and then everybody in between. The situation is critical, as all of you know, if you're in touch with the hospitals, and I guess this is specifically a question for Chief Leonard and Chief Esposito. It's one thing to talk about kits, which are life-saving, but now when you're talking about closing down a full-service 250-bed acute care hospital with an emergency room seeing 60,000 people a year to be replaced by condominiums, that's obscene. That's not only obscene, it's murder, and it's premeditated murder. The other hospitals in the downtown area, as you will know, Chief Leonard, are in dire straits. They're overwhelmed. Methodist was wonderful, and now the ambulances are backed up to get into the hospital. Maimonides is delivering babies in the halls. Lutheran is transferring his psychiatric patients directly to the ward, and the psychiatric ward is scared. Taking Litch out of the system at this point is absolutely crazy. The 60,000 people treated at Litch are now going to the other hospitals, and the hospitals can't handle it. And I'm sure you're in contact with the ambulance crews from the fire department. They will confirm everything I'm saying, and you know this, sir. Reopening Litch is in fact not a difficult job. The walls are fine, the ceiling is fine, the water is running, the electricity is on. It needs to be dusted off because it's been closed for a few months. But personnel can be found. Some of the personnel that was at Litch for 25 and 30 years, magnificent personnel dedicated to the hospital, will be coming back. But if additional personnel are needed, they can be easily found with a telephone call. There are agencies that provide relief pitchers, basically, temporary workers that go in, and Litch has been running for the last year and a half until the last 2 months on those people. They're available with a phone call. I'm urging everybody in the room now, and I'm sorry that Borough President Adams is not here, because he, among all of you, is the chief politician of Brooklyn, and it is indeed his responsibility to make sure that Litch doesn't die and leave not only the people who were served by Litch, and by SUNY's estimate, that was 460,000 people. We know that 60,000 people are treated every year in the emergency room. Borough President Adams should make this his #1 priority, because his #1 responsibility and duty to the people of Brooklyn is to protect, exactly as he said. And to take away Long Island College Hospital at this time is clearly not protecting.
Okay,
It is.
sir, we got your point. We want to move on to the next question, please.
Thank you very much.
Listen, it's a very good point, but the closing or the opening of Lynch is not really for this forum. What I can address is the fact that, and I'm sure EMS can back me up on this, we have a protocol. If emergency rooms are over their capacity, we will reroute those patients to other places. So the issue of the hospital is for a different forum, but you can be assured that the fire department will reroute those ambulances to the proper facilities so that those people can get care. So
Well,
thank you.
I would
Thank you.
like, may I have the opportunity to meet with you, gentlemen? And
Yeah,
talk about
absolutely. We'll be able to speak right after the forum.
Wonderful.
Just
Thank you very
wrap it
much.
up and give it to the next question. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Sue Rayboy, and I'm the founder of Patients for Litch. My concern is the Red Hook community is, I don't know the correct term, federally mandated for health services. As we all know, in Sandy, the Red Hook community was devastated. The staff at Litch went into the community, and the Red Hook community went into Litch. It's a very intricate layout of streets in Red Hook. The ambulances from Litch were stationed, one all the time in Red Hook. If there is another disaster, is there any training being done now so that the 911 responders know the streets in Red Hook to get to them very quickly? And is there a plan for ambulances where will the Red Hook community, if there is a disaster, be able to get to? Recently, in this past 6 months, it was well covered in the papers of somebody who we're not sure if that was the particular reason, but because the ambulance response was not familiar with the layout of Red Hook, 3 different ambulances. So what, and I don't represent, I live here in the Heights and I'm looking around and there is no one from Red Hook here. We need to make sure that the 911 responders know the street layout so that if there is a natural or a man-made disaster, they can find their way to Red Hook very quickly.
Thank you, ma'am. I'll give the chief from the fire department opportunity.
Thank you.
Well, the ambulance deployment matrix is constantly updated and addressed. And if they did they close units if they closed Long Island College Hospital ambulances, they were immediately replaced by FDNY ambulances. And the FDNY ambulances that replaced them are stationed in those areas. You actually have the Red Hook Station, Station 32 at Bond and Carroll, which provides the ambulance service to the Red Hook area. So I can assure you that those units are well aware of their neighborhood and what is going on down there. But that area is served not only by FDNY, but by Lutheran Hospital and various other EMS. The Litch ambulances were part of the 9/11 system.
Yes.
They weren't separate. They are dispatched by the FDNY. So once they folded shop, the fire department immediately replaced them with FDNY units.
Thank you, chief.
Thank you.
I wanted to follow up because I spoke to the candidates and reps outside about my question, and I wanted to share with the audience. They can't come out to speak. In the case of the concern with the electricity, turning off the circuit breaker is more about the appliances. And you don't want, when they restore power, to have your juice on and you may have some problem with an appliance, with the sudden power surge. So it's more from on that standpoint, why it's a good idea to turn off your circuit breaker. And you can go to the website, connet.com, and get more information specifically about the impact on how you do with your appliances in the event of emergency.
Thank you.
Right. At the very least, you should unplug everything, at the very
Yes.
least. Right, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Be prepared, we get the answer for you. There you go, thank you.
Thank you. On a personal note, before we wrap up, CERT is a wonderful program with New York City OEM. In fact, I'm a part of OEM CERT. I see one of the chiefs, the Brooklyn chief, Jacob, here, who has many members of CERT. It works great. It organizes in time of crisis. I want to encourage you. And again, I want to thank everybody, and of course, my good friend, Commissioner Esposito. Who would ever imagine that I'll be here introducing you at Borough Hall as the new Commissioner of OEM? It's a great honor, so thank you so much. So we're going to wrap it up. I want to thank again the NYPD, Fire Department, and all of you who participated. Thank you so much. Have a good evening.
That question of the electric, I got flooded out, and I turned it off. But I think you're